Welcome to Tactical Tycoon Radio, reloading the American dream, bringing you all the gear you may have never heard of but won't be able to live without. Whether it's new, up and coming, or just plain exciting, Tactical Tycoon Radio wants to share independent American businesses and their products and services with you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tactical Tycoon Radio with your hosts Gino and Sean.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Tactical Tycoon Radio. I am Gino, and with me, as always, my co-host Sean. What's going on, Sean?
Going on, Gino? How you doing?
Not too bad, my friend. How was your karma building?
My what?
Your karma building. Weren't you making some deposits in the karma bank, helping out with tornado
Oh,
relief?
yeah. You know, when we went down there, and I hate to talk bad about things, but it was not nearly as... The area was not as inviting as it was when Shelly and I went down to Fairdale. We went down there. We were told to go over to this multiple city government building / county building and fill out some waivers. And we did that. And the guy sitting at the desk basically told me and Shell that, okay, your waivers are signed. We'll catalog them, and you can go home now. We're not accepting volunteers.
Wait a minute.
Right.
Okay.
This is literally 3 days after the tornado hit.
Wow.
So we did have a friend that was on site in the plate, and we got a hold of her, and we did help some families. We did some water distribution. We did some food distribution. Just muscling it around and walking up and down the street, asking people if they needed anything. And then we also helped one family get their furniture out of the house so that they could start the process of gutting the house, because I have a pretty good feeling their house is going to be torn down and rebuilt.
Now, who was running it? Was it the local government running it, or was it like the Red Cross, or?
When we went down to Fairdale, and I don't know if you've ever been down to Fairdale. Fairdale is a town of about 150 people.
Okay.
So when we went down there, they don't necessarily even have a city government. They have it's more of an association council. And when we went down there, they were pretty much willing to take anything and anybody that was willing to put an effort in. Now, Ottawa is more the size of Crystal Lake, I believe, and the plate is just about the same size as Union. So you have a much larger city, and now you have a fully established government involved, and they didn't know what they were dealing with. They didn't know how to deal with it. They didn't want any advice. They were waiting for the Red Cross. They were waiting for the Salvation Army, and they were waiting for Team Rubicon to show up.
Okay.
So they were waiting for direction from the actual professional disaster people to come in and tell them what to do.
Okay. Yeah, I did some disaster relief work down in Houston after Hurricane Ike, and it was like the larger the government entity that was in charge of it got, the less efficient things got done.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it would have been horrific if it would have been a town the size of Rockford, or God forbid something even bigger where where your government's more involved and intrusive in everybody's life.
Hey, did you ever get your sights changed out on your Springfield?
Yes.
How'd that go?
I broke the sight pusher.
No.
Yeah, I busted the block that actually pushes the sight out, chipped.
Wow.
So I took it up to Dunright, and he charged me $30, and I'm happy with it. I shot it yesterday, and the thing is just dead nuts on.
That's awesome. What was his turnaround time?
I took it in on a Friday. He had it done for me Saturday morning.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. And
Very
I couldn't go get it because we were down in Ottawa, but I went and picked it up Tuesday and shot it Tuesday evening for, I don't know, about 150 rounds through it. And it's nice.
awesome. So our interview tonight is with Derek Costa, the owner of D Costa Knives. And I was thinking before we got to the interview, me and you could talk a little bit about knives.
Okay.
So, do you carry a knife? Do you have an everyday carry knife?
I do. I have a Schrade folder that I carry.
Okay. Do you ever carry a small fixed blade, or is it just a folder?
It's just a folder right now. I'd like to get a little, maybe a little belt mounted karambit or something small that's, not real difficult to hide, because it's just easier to pull a fixed blade out than it is to rip out a folder.
So before I got into guns, I was what you would call a knife aficionado. Read between the lines here. I was pretty much like obsessed with them.
Okay.
And there's been times where I'll have up to 4 knives on me. Now, when most people hear that, they go, well, that's a little excessive.
Right.
But they all do serve a purpose. There's always a little... I always carry a multi-tool on me, and there's usually a knife blade on every multi-tool that I carry. I've been carrying the Leatherman Skeletool because it's a very small, very lightweight multi-tool. Basically, it's just pliers, 2 screwdriver bits, and a knife blade. And that fits in my pocket real well because I found that when I was carrying my big, bulky Leatherman Surge, it's got like 52 tools, but I would really only ever use the pliers and the screwdriver.
Right.
So I've got that. I've got a dedicated folding knife, which it varies. It used to be either a CRKT M21 with a flipper on it, because flippers are cool.
Uh-huh.
And I like the fact that the CRKT, their M21, has 2 locks on it. There's a frame lock, and then there's a push-button lock right on the base of the knife, but I can still open that knife and close that knife with one hand. So if I was holding something in my hand, like a cardboard box, and I could flip the knife open, I could cut it, and then I could manipulate the locks on it to close it, put it back in my pocket, which was nice. And then my third knife is a small fixed blade, which is usually it's always on my my offhand, not my non-dominant hand, which for me is my left hand. And it's either a K-Bar TDI or a Vulture Equipment Works Talon knife. Now, the Vulture Equipment Works, it's a great knife, but it's a little bit bigger than the TDI large profile. And I just got into wearing the fixed blade on the offside about a year and a half ago. And very, very, very rarely does it come out of the sheath because I don't use that knife to cut boxes or cut paracord, or that one is just a straight, if I need it, defensive blade.
Yeah, that's not a daily life knife.
No. And then occasionally I will go all tactical mall ninja and wear a neck knife, but that's really just because it's cool. And since I have become the knife guy, the guys at work kind of expect it.
So I've got my Schrade folder is just a standard folding blade. It's not as nice as they used to be. They've kind of gone to Chinese manufacturing, so the steel's kind of pot, and it's still a knife. It still cuts. I keep it pretty razor sharp. For work, I have a 2-inch fixed blade that I keep on my. You made the sheath for it. with my lineman scissors. It's called a blue blade. It's a lineman knife for cutting copper sheathing. I work for the local telecommunications company, so they provide me one of those. I keep that on me when I'm at work, and then if I'm going into a sketchy area in my backpack, I keep my I call it my pocket sword. It's my 7.5-inch Tanto from Cold Steel folder.
Nice.
You turned me onto that one.
I'm a huge fan of Cold Steel. Cold Steel, CRKT, Benchmade, K-Bar. Big fan of all of them, and it's one of those things where you get exactly what you're paying for.
Right.
I used to be the guy that would only carry like the cheapest $6 or $7 folder that I could pick up at my local big box store because I would use it as a screwdriver. I would use it as a pry bar. I wouldn't sharpen it. I'd never clean it.
Yeah, all my knives are readily stoned and ready to go. I have sitting at my desk. I'm just looking around right now. Sitting at my desk, I've got an old cheap butterfly knife that my buddy gave me for standing up in his wedding. I have my Schrade. This is the SCHF1SW. It's their big 7.5-inch Bowie knife that's got the storage in the handle. That's sitting here. I've got about 3 or 4 more knives in a drawer right next to me. I mean, it's pretty sharp over here.
Yeah, as I've gotten older and hopefully a little bit more wiser, I've started to really look at spending a little bit more on a quality knife because I can take care of it. I can sharpen it.
Right.
I can put oil on it. Even my little beater folders that I'll carry. Especially like my CRKT, that thing, if I don't wipe it down every couple weeks, because I cut a lot of cardboard boxes up at work,
yep.
And that will get so gunked up with tape residue that it's not even funny.
WD-40 will take that off pretty quickly.
Yeah, but it's you don't. You don't have to spend an hour and a half disassembling everything and putting it in the ultrasonic, but you should, a little bit of maintenance goes a long way with your everyday carry knives.
Yeah, I mean, when I go hunting, I've got a German made dagger that's out of 420 tool steel or whatever it is. It's a really nice blade. That's old Pakistan. Back when Pakistan was making really, really solid blades. I use,
Go ahead.
I use that for doing all my gutting and skinning when we go hunting, and that knife gets sharpened and alcoholed and cleaned almost every time it comes out of the sheath.
Do you get all hung up on the different steels that the knives are made out of?
I don't usually. I used for a long time, for my first, 10 or 15 years of my adult life, I was in the tool and die industry. I know a little bit about some of the older stuff, but, things have changed in the last, 20, 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer something that is not Chinese steel. I could put a knife on a stone and tell if it's cheap Chinese pot steel.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference between that and a cold steel or a CKRT, something that's made with at least some version of good quality American steel. I know the feeling of cheap Chinese pot steel on a stone.
Yeah.
So I as I've gotten older, the knives that I do buy here and there, I spend a little bit more money to get something that I know is not going to be just garbage steel.
Yeah, I've started just cringing when the guys at work will pull out their pocket knives and use them as a pry bar. I'm like, no, 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 don't do that, don't do that.
Oh, there it goes.
Yeah.
So,
So
uh,
in the interview with D Costa, we were talking about knives because they're a custom knife designer and manufacturer.
I've got it. I got his Facebook up right now. It's got some nice looking stuff. I tell you that.
Yeah, so he's a designer and a manufacturer. So they draw it up and then they cut it out and they treat it and they grind it. I mean, they do everything, and his price points are a little bit different than what I was used to seeing. But that being said, there's a reason that they're priced the way they are. Fantastic knives made out of amazing steel. It's like the difference, and we did this a little bit in the interview with them. You're going from a Rock Island 1911 to a Nighthawk Custom 1911.
Yeah, I looking at some of these pictures. These are not your average 70, 80, $90 pocket knives.
This is it's definitely a knife that you take care of, and it's something that could stay in your family for generations, which is awesome.
Yeah, this is definitely a keeper.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a keeper. It's a very it's what's Obi-Wan's quote from A New Hope? It's an elegant weapon for
Right.
for a more refined time.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of these pictures. These are not your typical throw together cheapo knives. These are hand fitted, quality machining, quality tool steel. These are some really nice looking knives. I'd be afraid to lose it.
Yeah, he's got some absolutely gorgeous designs going on in some of his prototype stuff. All of his stuff, but some of his prototype stuff is really cool, forward-thinking blade shapes.
Yeah, this is a knife that I bring it home and I put it in a drawer because I'd be afraid to take it out and lose it.
Yeah, and he was. We were doing the interview, and he was telling me that he, like a lot of the guys that we interview, they have other jobs. I mean, just like us, they're
Right,
not. It's not their full time thing. And he said when he started, he was a real estate agent. So,
right,
but what he really wanted to do was do the knife thing completely on the side to show people that you can have this idea and you can want to do this and you can make it work and grow it just from itself,
right.
which is awesome. All right, guys. So without further ado, here's Derek Costa from D Costa Knives. Hey guys, Gino here. Unfortunately, Sean couldn't be with us this week for the interview. This week I am joined with Derek Costa from D Costa Knives. What's going on, Derek?
How you doing, Gene? Thanks for having me on.
Glad to have you. So I am very excited. You are our first knife maker extraordinaire on the podcast.
That's awesome. I'm
Yeah.
honored.
So tell us about, give us a general overview of D Costa Knives.
Well, I'll start from the beginning because I think that's critical. And what I mean by critical is that I think for people to understand where our company started and where it's going. When I was 6, my mom bought me my first buck knife. Don't ask me why. I guess that's what you do as a parent back in the 70s or 80s. So she bought me my first buck knife at 6, which makes me, in first grade at the time. And from that point on, I felt like a knife was a part of me, and I think a lot of guys can relate to that. So as I got older, it morphed into a passion for knives even more. I remember going to, I think it was called Jimco, like down in Southern California. I think that's the name of the store. And the Rambo knife was really hot. You know, you can get the compass on the end of it. You can get the
big survival blade.
The survival blade, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and see, it still makes me like excited thinking about it. So that's how I felt as a kid. You know, my mom's to blame for all this, to be honest with you. My grandpa was in World War II, and I remember him. He had a big machete that he brought back from like Guadalcanal or something, and this machete, man, it was like my best friend. And I'd go out there and I'd hack cactuses in his backyard. You know, just stupid stuff that kids do. And so I can't really say how it all started as of recently, unless I go back to when I was 6 years old. So that's when it all started for me. And then it morphed into what it is now. And kind of the in-between story of it all from the time I was 6 to now was what really kicked it into overdrive is I started hanging out with a contractor friend of mine. And I had collected knives over the years, but it was nothing serious, nothing to brag about. And I remember being in my contractor buddy's garage, and we were working on a side job together. And I grabbed a piece of metal, just a mild steel metal, and I tried to sharpen it, razor sharp, and I tried to cut like a piece of rope or something, just because that's what the job called for or something. I don't know what I was doing, but it wasn't like I was just experimenting. And he goes, "It's not going to cut that rope." I go, "What do you mean it's not going to cut that rope?" He goes, "It's not heat treated." "What do you mean it's not heat treated? It's a hard piece of metal. It's a soft piece of rope, and the edge is sharp. What are you talking about?" So he goes, "No, you got to understand that the metal is technically soft right now, and it's not hardened to cut." And that like baffled my brain, you know. And so I thought, you know, I'm going to go on to YouTube and kind of dissect this whole heat treat thing. And that's what really kicked it into overdrive, is when I watched videos of Walter Sorrells and Mike Snowdy and Murray Carter and a lot of and Jason Browse and all these guys that just make awesome knives, but they had a well-known YouTube presence. And I got hooked on it, man. I just saw the stuff that they were doing, whether it was forging steel or profiling blades, which is called stock removal. Whatever it was, I was just blown away by the creativity, the art side of it second, but the hardening of the steel first. That's what triggered it. So once I started learning that guys like Mike Snowdy, and I don't know if you've heard of these guys, but you can YouTube them and or Google them. Mike Snowdy's kind of hidden off in his cave lately, but back when about 7 years ago, I really watched every single one of his videos. And he's a unique character, and that's why I picked him out of the lineup that I just gave you, because if anybody looks at Mike Snowdy, they're going to say, this guy's a knife maker. He's a freak. He's a weirdo. He'd have gold teeth, you know, one day on, you know. Have you heard of Mike Snowdy?
I have.
Okay, great. Really, really great guy. So if you see his videos, which they're hard to find now, he puts on a persona in the videos, but on the phone and in person, just a nice, good guy. And so anyways, I saw Mike in one in particular video, and he had about 500 blades laid out on the table, and he was going to sell them for, I think, $120 each, something like that. And I was thinking about buying one, you know.
Were these folding knives or were these fixed blade knives?
They were fixed blades. They were called the Snowdy Boss. They were what he says. It's not a show knife. It's a go knife. And it wasn't for looks. It was just to be used out in the bush, in the field, you know. So but it was still nice. It was a custom knife, and it was within my price range. So I thought, I'm going to buy one. But before I bought one, I looked at the numbers on the table, and I did the math. He had 500 knives times $120, maybe $15 in materials. That's a lot of money, and he was probably going to knock them out in a 30-day period. So that triggered another part of my brain, that the business side of my brain and common sense side, and said, you know what, I could probably do this myself. I'm an artist. I like to build things, make things. I'm going to try this. And so I bought a couple custom knives, and I looked at them closely and saw what's entailed. And then I said, I'm going to try this. So I was on a golf course with a cousin of mine, and I said, hey, if you ever come across a grinder, I'm looking for one. He goes, what kind of grinder? I said, well, it's a particular one. It's called a Burr King. It's big and green. And he goes, you know what? I make golf clubs. He was a golf pro at a golf course. He said, I make golf clubs, and me and my partner, we no longer worked together, and he was going to help me, but he left his grinder behind, and he said I can have it. And I said, well, what color is it? And he goes, I think it's green. I said, man, if you have a Burger King laying around the shop and you don't use it anymore, I will buy that thing in a heartbeat. I didn't know what I didn't know, and so I ended up buying it from my cousin, cut him a deal, and I got this Burger King grinder, which is about a $2,200 grinder, for about $700 or so.
Wow.
Yeah, but the only problem is that the thing was not variable speed. It was one speed, and that speed was eat the metal as fast as possible. And when you go buy expensive blade steel, the last thing you want to do is watch it go bye-bye within seconds, and that's what happened. And so one cool thing about my company that some people close to me know is that I started this business with the intention of starting a business, but secondly, to show the younger people that you can literally take nothing and turn it into something. I sell real estate full-time. That's my full-time gig. But I wanted to show younger people that, like nephews, nieces, and their friends, and anybody, that if you have the desire, the willpower, you can actually create something from literally nothing. A lot of people say, oh, you have to have money to make money. And I completely disagree with that. And if somebody wants to call me and argue with me on that, that's fine. I would love to talk with them about it. But what I did is I said, okay, I'm not going to use any of my hard-earned real estate money to start this knife business. I'm going to show people that you can literally take a job that doesn't require a college education and turn it into something useful. So what I did is I hung out with my contractor buddy that I told you about earlier, and I said, hey, here's the deal. I'm going to go buy me a variable speed grinder because I'm tired of burning up good metal, and I'm going to start buying these tools as we go. So I'm going to go do a bunch of side jobs and figure out a way to pay for all this as I go. So I did. I started doing side jobs. So he'd come pick me up. So I pretended like I was broke, basically. Even though I wasn't broke, I pretended like I was broke. Mm-hmm. So I pretended that I didn't have a car, so he'd come pick me up, right? I would go help him. And the next thing you know, I started making the money and then buying the tools. So I literally pretended like I had nothing and started working for it. So eventually it turned into a variable speed grinder, one of the best investments I've ever made, and then a heat treat oven, and then so on. So I started making fixed blade knives with the intention of making folding knives. So I started making these fixed blade knives just as a hobby on the side to take my mind off the stress of real estate. Maybe in the future I thought about selling them, but nothing serious. So I started making a few folders and posting them on Facebook, and I hadn't dabbled in Instagram by that point. It was just Facebook, and friends were saying, it's always your friends and family, oh, those are nice, but you never know if that's honest or not. So then they started buying them. So I thought, okay, well, if they bought one, that was kind of a charity deal, I'm going to support Derek as a friend or family member. But they started buying 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and I thought, oh no, this is an addiction for them just as much as it is for me. They're into knives just as much as I am. And I started realizing that, okay, since the time I was 6 years old, I had a passion for knives, but so do a lot of other people. There's a lot of other guys that have that same passion.
Oh yeah.
So, oh man, it's crazy, and we'll get into that. But so I started making these fixed blades with the intention of getting into folders. And I didn't know where to start, though. Folders are very, very complex. Do you have a favorite brand, Gene?
It depends. My go-to is usually either a Benchmade, or I am kind of a fan of the more out there designs from Cold Steel as well.
Okay, cool. So that gives me something to go, a platform. And a lot of guys are like you. They stick with the tried and true Benchmade, Spyderco, Cold Steels. And those guys have it down to a science. They really do. They've been around forever, and they do a good job. But a lot of people, and I'd love to be able to teach people like your listeners about how a folder works over time if they're interested in picking my brain. Because the more you understand the folders, the more you'll appreciate the price you pay for the good ones.
Oh yeah.
Someone looks at a Benchmade and says, well, how come it varies from like $80 to $450? Like, where do they get that? And I can easily point that out, how they get it. But some would say China, some would say it's because one's made in the U.S. or something. But sometimes it's not. It's what goes into the knife. But anyways, I wanted to get into folders, and I didn't know where to start. So one day I sat around the garage, and I was tired of making fixed blades, and I started making a prototype, my contractor buddy and mine. And we made one out of aluminum, and I thought it was okay. The weird thing about knives, it always starts off one way in your head, and by the time you translate it to metal, it's a little different. And either you're going to love it or you're going to just scrap it. But this one ended up being something I just more or less wanted to learn the functionality of the folder as opposed to caring about how it looked at the time. But the weird thing that happened with that prototype out of aluminum was that people liked it. Other people did, not me, but other people. And I showed it off to some friends, and oh man, that's awesome. And then again, it was like, are they serious, or they just give me the charity compliments?
Right. Is that just your buddy, being your buddy?
Yeah, which I never trust. I mean, I trust my friends' opinions on other stuff, but when it comes to when I create something, I don't know if they're excited because they saw somebody create something, or if they would actually buy it. So that's always the struggle as a knife maker. People say, "Oh, it's a cool knife." You're like, "Okay, but will you pay $600 for it?" Oh, no, not really.
Yeah,
so
it's cool, but not that cool.
Yeah, exactly. So at this time, I came up with this prototype. My girlfriend and I, we both live together. We live in the Sacramento area, but her mom has a ranch down near Monterey County, which is about 3 hours south of Sacramento, southwest. We go down there a lot because we own cattle and we ranch and all kinds of stuff down there. But again, we sell real estate. And we thought we spend so much time at the ranch, why not go down to Monterey and sell down there as well? So long story short, we made a transition. We changed brokerages and everything else, and we sell houses down in that Pebble Beach, Carmel area. But we didn't know anybody. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to get on Instagram and finally, break into that Instagram scene and just see what that's all about. And once I did, I saw a knife maker named Ray Laconico. And I fell in love with his knives. They were awesome. They were very clean and simple. He's a custom knife maker, and he designs for Kaiser knives. And on one of Ray's posts, I saw a guy that liked his knife, and it said Carmel Cutlery. I thought, no way. This couldn't be. How are we spending so much time down here? I never knew that downtown Carmel had a cutlery store. So in the back of my mind, I thought, oh God, it's going to be a bunch of kitchen knives or some crap, So I told my girlfriend, I said, let's go check it out. So we drove over there and walked in, and it's like I fell in love with the store, and the owner, Steve, and I hit it off. And I told him what I was doing. I showed him the prototype, and of course he loved it, right? Because everybody else loves it but me. And he said, yeah, actually, if you make some of those, let me know. I'll take them to Vegas with me to the USN show, and I'll sell these for you. And I thought, this is weird. This is too good to be true, And he goes, oh, by the way, I know Ray Laconico personally. He lives right here in California. He comes into the shop sometimes, and he goes, maybe Ray will let us, take one of his designs and kind of do a production run of them. I thought, and my ego at the time said, oh, no way. I want to do my own thing, But about 30 days later, I was driving down the Highway 68 by Laguna Seca, and it hit me. I go, I told my girlfriend, I said, I need to stop being stubborn. I'm getting older. I need to just start taking the easy route. So I told Steve, the owner of Carmel Cutlery, I said, go ahead and ask Ray if he'll let me do the EZC, which is a new model of his that's really hot. I thought it was a long shot, but I figured I'd ask. So 30 minutes after I asked Steve, he goes, yeah, hey, Ray's going to go ahead and let you do it. So, okay, well, I know how to make a knife out of aluminum, and it's not very functional, but I know how to get that far as doing a profile of the knife. I have no idea from there how to do a folder. So a few weeks go by, and I decided it's time to go down and kind of hit the pavement and meet Ray and figure out how to make folders.
So as you're going through all this, did you have someone that was there showing you, hey, this is going to work better than this, try this, or was this all just trial and error?
I made the prototype. Now, mind you, the prototype had no lockup mechanism. It didn't have hardly anything going for it. It just was two handles, or a handle with two sides and a blade that rotated, and that was it. There was no functionality to it. It was more of, I was trying to translate what was in my head onto metal, and I didn't have any idea of how to do the lockup or anything. So, which I'm gonna always talk about that, because your listeners will really appreciate a knife when they understand the lockup. So I always talk about that. So hopefully I don't sound like I'm repeating myself about that. But I had nobody telling me anything until I met Ray Laconico. When I met Ray Laconico, I went to his house, and he literally sits in his garage every day. He takes about $40 worth of materials and turns it into a $650 knife 5 hours later.
Wow.
And that, a lot of guys might hear that and say, I need to start doing that, but I recommend they do not do that, because you have to be extremely talented to do that. And he's been doing it for 10 years. That's why he's at the $650 mark and up. That's where it starts, though. So I sat with Ray. I learned the ins and outs of the folder. I learned how to do basic troubleshooting when you have issues. And here we are today. We decided to, let me back up a little bit. When I was making fixed blades, my brain started thinking about Mike Snowdy and that whole video about him pumping out a bunch of knives. I started doing the math after my friends started being repeat offenders and buying my knives, you know. So I thought, some of these popular designs I have, I can just go down and get them cut out somewhere, get the steel cut out. I don't have to spend time profiling on the grinder. That will save me time, and I can really make a business out of this. At that time, a friend of mine that bought one of my knives says, hey, you need to meet my friend Troy. He runs a machine shop down in Lodi, 30 minutes south of where we are, and Troy can knock these suckers out for you. I said, okay, well, let me go meet Troy. So I go down, meet Troy, and he cuts out like maybe 12 blades for me or something. It came out to like $9 each. And at the time I understood where machine shops get their pricing, but it didn't make sense to me when it was all said and done for setup and everything. So I ended up maybe a month later going back and doing another batch of knives, because my brain was still in the business mode. I wanted to grow. I wanted it to be easier and faster. About that time, I started thinking about, I need to assemble a team of people. I don't know who's going to be on the team. I don't know where they're going to come from, but I want to take people that have the same passion for knives as I do and take part in this journey. And when I first met Troy, he really liked knives. He's like, oh, let me show you some that I've made. It's like, of course he made a knife, right? Everybody likes knives. And he runs a machine. He runs a machine shop. Why wouldn't he make a bunch,
Oh, yeah.
So we ended up, I asked Troy one day, I said, would you be interested in doing this little business with me, this venture? I have an idea here. I said, I'm going to make a folding knife. And this was before we met Ray and everything. And he goes, yeah, dude, I'd love to, And I said, well, I got one guy on board, And I said, well, give me some time. I need to figure it all out money-wise, and I want to learn how to make it. And then a few months go by, and I met Ray Laconico, came back to Troy and said, hey, man, you and I need to go down together, meet Ray. You can put your eyes on how this all goes down, and we'll translate it into a CNC machine. We'll translate it into a water jet. We'll translate it into a laser, and we'll make this happen. When I brought the prototype into Carmel Cutlery, I said the same thing to Steve, the owner. I said, hey, I want to start this journey of this knife company. I don't know. All I know is where I want to go. I don't know how I'm going to get there, though. And he goes, yeah, I'm in. Count me in. So we've all teamed up, and we started cranking out. Well, when Troy and I went down to meet Ray Laconico, Troy, he has a 3-car garage. If it's one of those 2-car garages, but it goes in a little deeper in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And it was full of tools and crap. And he goes, I got a spot in the back of the garage. We can put something back here. And I don't know what yet. And I said, all right, well, let's go meet Ray and figure out what we need. We came back after Ray's house, and Troy got on the computer and bought himself a manual mill, you know. And we thought, oh man, we're living high on the hog now. Look at us, you know, we got a mill. Some guys might be asking themselves right now, like, why didn't he go through his shop that he runs? And the reason we don't use Troy's shop is because Troy didn't trust the guys that worked at his shop to get it right. And he wanted to do a lot of the stuff at home on his own time, too. So we had this manual mill, and if there's anybody listening right now that understands machining, I need to tell them this little secret. If you get a brand new machine, make sure to mic it. Check your tolerances before you even use the thing, because we got a brand new machine, and it was off by anywhere from 30 to 60 thousandths of an inch. In the knife world, that translates into don't even think about making a knife, especially if you're off 5 to 10 thousandths. That's the difference between an awesome knife and a piece of crap. So we didn't check it, and we started running some of the Easy C parts. But we kept breaking in mills. All the holes were off. But we ran a bunch before we caught on to that. And we ended up having to scrap like the first batch. And that was about over 100 handles worth. So if you were to do the math on that, we sell these at $400 a pop. And we had about over 100 handles that we had to trash. So it was basically the time and labor we had into it that hurt the most. But anyways, I can bore you with all kinds of details, but if you want to ask some more questions, feel free.
So on your Facebook page, you guys put up a lot of videos that show off the quality of your knives, but they also kind of bring into existence what people that have, you know, the generic mass-produced folders might not even know. I didn't realize until I was watching your video about the center line of the knife, and I went and I looked at, you know, some of my cheaper pocket knives that none of them are on center. And I'm like, wow, yeah. I didn't even realize that was a thing. Do you guys see a lot of people, after they see the videos that you guys are putting up, showing people what to look for, that they're going, hey, why doesn't my knife do this?
Yeah, you know, a good knife to base your business off of if you're going to start a knife business is a Chris Reeves Sabenza. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've heard of that knife, mm-hmm. but Chris Reeves has won manufacturer of the award for like the last 100 years. You know, nobody comes close to him. I mean, guys do come close, but when it comes to awards, he's won the most. And so when I started this knife thing, I wanted to make a knife that had all the qualities of a Sabenza. Everybody knows that that's the benchmark, you know. So, but before then, Gene, I had no idea what to look for. Everybody thinks when you get a knife, well, does it cut? You know,
right?
I can get one at Walmart. I can cut twine just as good with this one. You know, it's like, and I got it for $6. It's like, well, okay, I get it. You can, and if you lose it, you can throw it away 100 times or whatever, and still be under the price of a Sabenza. I get it. But what happened, Gene, is that I didn't want to make a production knife. I didn't want to make a $30 knife because the way you do that is through China. I didn't want to be China. I wanted to be the United States. And so we had to figure out what it is that guys are looking for in the non-Chinese knives, or more or less the custom knives. And it was the important things you're talking about: blade centering, lockup percentage. I mean, stick on the lock, you know. I can bore you with the details, but there's a lot of things that go into a knife, especially a semi-custom or what we call a mid-tech or custom, that are a lot more, we pay a lot more attention to detail on those items than maybe Benchmade or somebody else.
Do you guys see a lot of people that started with that $6 knife that want to use that knife as a pry bar or a screwdriver? Do you start to see them eventually, the more that they use knives in their everyday life, that eventually they start going, hey, you know what? Maybe I want one of these real nice high-end knives, one of these custom knives made, in-house in the United States by someone that knows what they're doing, because it's an investment. They know that it's going to be with them forever. They're going to spend the money on it, but they're not going to lose it. They're not going to use it as a screwdriver. Do you see that at all with any of your customers?
Oh, God. Well, let's translate that to guns, because I'm a gun guy too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you get a Rock Island 1911. Okay. You get the Rock Island 1911 made in the Philippines, if I'm not mistaken, right? This is what, $400 or $500?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
The gun. Okay. And a guy can go out and shoot it and go, look, I had no malfunctions. I bought this thing for $500. It's a great gun. And you're thinking, wow, go get me one. So you go get yourself one. And next thing you know, everybody's got a $500 Rock Island. But there's always the crowd that wants a $2,000 less bear.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm part of that crowd because I get bored with the Rock Islands, And you know what? Sometimes it's fun to be able to know you have a gun that can shoot an 1.5 inch group from 50 yards or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so I bought myself a less bear because of that. Just because I know it doesn't mean I have to go out. I'm not going to compete with a gun, but I just know that the quality's there. So for the people that quality matters, they do. They go from that, flathead screwdriver knife and get a custom knife. And let me warn your listeners that the second you stick the tip in, you want to go all the way when it comes to custom knives. And that's what happened to me, and it happens to everybody. You get bit by the bug.
Oh, yeah. I used to have a Rock Island 1911, actually. And it shot. It put holes in paper and whatnot, but it wasn't until I picked up a Nighthawk that a friend of mine had, a Nighthawk Custom, and their slogan is one gun, one gunsmith, and that really struck a chord with me. And between that and just feeling the differences in the two, where the Nighthawk feels like a finely tuned machine, not something that was just slapped together for the lowest price point possible. There is a noticeable difference. Now, not that there's anything wrong with the Rock Island. I mean, they'll shoot, but it's what are you looking for in quality?
Yes. And that's it. Some guys say, look, I don't, you can hand the gun to a lot of people, and I'd say about 70%, they'd say, wow, you can just tell the quality, like a Rolex watch or whatever. You just know you're holding on to quality. But then you get the guys like, I don't care. I saved myself $1,500,
Right.
And I'm the kind of person I want, there's a reason, like, you always have the argument, the Ferrari or the Corvette. And some people say, oh, the Corvette outperforms the Ferrari. Yeah, but the guys that are buying the Ferrari aren't buying it because it necessarily outperforms a Corvette. They're buying it because the Corvette guys can't buy them. They're buying them because nobody has them, or not that many guys have them as they have Corvettes. And that's where the knife world is different than, let's say, the Walmart or the Benchmade or the Spyderco. I hate to group them all into one, but that's kind of the thing compared to custom knife.
Yeah, production company versus a custom company.
And they're phenomenal production knives, by the way. I'm just saying, like, the guys that are our customers are not, they're looking for something you cannot get. And that's the reason why you mentioned we post so many videos and stuff talking about this kind of stuff, because not everybody, there's a small percentage of these knife nuts and they're keyboard warriors. They follow this stuff like a religion. But for everybody else, I think it's important to point out the differences in a $500 knife compared to a $80 or $100 knife, which is still a lot for some people.
Yeah. So do you guys have any big plans for this upcoming year? Anything new that you're working on that's coming out?
Yeah, we do. Actually, about the time I started posting stuff on Instagram, one of the world's most well-known knife makers reached out to me, and he's a knife designer, I should say. Derek Costa, Darrel Caston, if anybody wants to look him up. Great guy. And he says, hey, you guys are making knives, and I want to be a part of this. I know you're local. I'm only 30 minutes from him. Turns out I'm like literally down the road from him. And he has designed for Spyderco before. He's designed for Boker. Just a phenomenal designer. And so the tail end of last year, he was just pumping ideas to us, and we couldn't keep up. You know, we had a little manual mill, but I ended up buying a CNC machine shortly after that. And so Daryl, he keeps so many ideas and designs coming our way that it's hard to keep up. But yeah, if you look at my Instagram page, which I try to post the most recent information and photos, or my Facebook page, which trails behind my Instagram page, you can see some of the new stuff we're working on, and it's really outside of the box. Daryl's stuff is really outside the box. Some people love it, some people hate it, but it's cool for me as a new knife maker to not get kind of pigeonholed into a certain style. I'm still new, so I'm still testing the waters of what's going to stick.
Have you ever thought about going into the production side of it, or would you rather stay on the custom side?
This is what I learned after the EZC. The EZC, our goal was to make about 200 plus EZCs. The EZC stands for Easy Carry, the Ray Laconico design. And we wanted to run 200 plus of those knives, and we put together a pre-order list, and we have almost every one of them sold on the pre-order list. After about 20 of those knives, Gene, I kind of wanted to shoot myself. And I realized that the EZC is a very popular design, and much like the Sabenza, it can probably be around for 25, 30 years. But when you have a guy like Derek Costa on your team and people like Ray Laconico at your disposal, and these guys are just great minds, you can make some cool stuff. So we do what's called a mid-tech. Part custom, kind of like that one gun, one gunsmith. Mm-hmm. That would be technically a mid-tech, you know, where you might have Ruger that just pumps them out, stamps them out, you know, where a Les Barrett, you have a guy that's in there honing the slide and stuff like that. So we're in between the custom and the production, which is called a mid-tech. And after about, like I said, 20 to 30 of those knives, you get sick of the same old design. Even though it's job security and it's money in the bank, you want to push yourself. You want to tap into a different crowd of guy, you know. Everybody that has a Sabenza, they probably are going to buy knives that are pretty close or similar looking. Mm-hmm. And that's cool and all. It's job security, but we do both. We have the crazy Daryl Caston designs, and we have the very elegant Ray Laconico designs that we work with, and then we collaborate on our own too.
Have you seen any trends lately in the knife world?
Yeah,
it seems like the past, I don't know, year or so, every time I looked on Instagram, it seemed like the new hip thing to do was to have the sheep's foot or Warncliffe style blade. It seemed like every knife I saw on Instagram, like that was the new hip thing to do.
That's funny you say that, because I'm actually playing with one as we speak. It's one of our new designs, and it's a Warncliffe. It's a blunt nose basic knife, you know, for guys that are trying to picture it. But it's one that doesn't necessarily come to a point like a spear. The point drops down more like a box cutter or something. And yeah, what happens is since Forged in Fire, I don't know if you've heard of the show.
I'm not allowed to watch it anymore because I keep looking around my shop, seeing if I got space to put a forge in or not.
Yeah, and I've heard that. I just heard that story from a guy that owned a bike store yesterday. Said the same thing. Yeah, Forged in Fire has kind of really triggered a lot of people to get off their ass and want to go out to the garage and bang on steel. And so when you get guys that are coming up like us, you do new things. You know, the knife industry sits pretty stale for a while because there's only a select few guys that can do it, and they all fit into the same box because they all go to the same knife shows and blade shows, and they all kind of catch on to what their buyers want, and then they all start doing it. So I promised myself that I wouldn't go to too many blade shows because of that. I didn't want to get boxed into a certain style, but you do see trends, and you have to keep up with them. For example, the flipper. The flipper is and a frame lock flipper is the most popular knife, and it probably will be for a long time. However, we're starting to see guys going back to a smaller knife, more of a pocket knife rather than a pocket clip knife, something that maybe sits down in your pocket like a gentleman's folder or something. So you do have trends, but the beauty of going outside the box is that you can blend the two. For example, there's a knife maker named Pena. I forgot his first name, but Pena. And you can see some of his knives. They're beautiful, elegant, old style looking, but new age technology. So he's got this old style looking, and then it's a flipper, whereas back in the 80s, it might have been just a thumb opener. So, but there are trends. You got to keep up or you got to create them, one or the other.
Awesome. All right, well, let everyone know where they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, they can get a hold of me on my Instagram page, which will soon change. It'll be Ohlone Knives soon, OHLONE Knives. But right now it's D_Costa_Knives. And they can check me out on my Facebook page, Derek Costa and D Costa Knives.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us and being our first knife company on.
Anytime, Gene. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on. And guys have any questions, they could reach out to me anytime. I'd be happy to answer questions for them.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, Gene. Great talking to you, man.
All right. All right, guys. So that's going to wrap it up for this week. If you want to get in contact with us, shoot us an email at tacticaltycoonradio@gmail.com or message us on the Facebook page. If you're a small independent company in the gun world, the knife world, the tactical training world, give us a shout. We'd love to have you guys on the show. That'll about do it. All right, guys. And as always, we are Gun Culture 2.0. Get out.
Get involved.
Get shooting.